We are here with Wessam Ayad, and she's going to be presenting on the Workplace Inclusion Charter. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for the introduction. And I'm hoping that my screen is shared and that everyone is able to see it now. Okay, great. So I know that I have like 5 or 6 minutes to talk, so I'll be a little bit fast, and please let me know if I'm going too fast. But I'm very happy to be meeting with all of you today and getting you into a journey of EDI, or Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, from awareness to action. And in order to move from awareness to action, we would start by asking ourselves first, what is our level of awareness? So are we really aware of EDI? So let's see. So talking about EDI, or Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, by the way, is it EDI, EDII, DEI? Have you ever heard that question before? Or have you asked yourself this question before? I bet that you did. So let's first start from an earlier stage. Who we are and what we want. So we are either employers, who are people who would like to succeed, or talent, who are also people who would like to succeed, which is in nature is an equation. I am a very strong believer in equations. So this equation is balanced in nature. However, we are not very much helping and supporting each other to equate that, or to balance this equation. So how to help each other succeed, how to become more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. And is it, by the way, safe to ask? Because I know that many employers would ask this question, like, we don't want to be offensive to anyone. So is it really okay to ask? Yes, it's very okay to ask. And our session today is going to be questions, and only questions, to learn together. So important consideration. These are a set of questions that employers, because I'm working with over 40 employers to help them with their EDI profile, so I've heard this again and again. Why there are sometimes conflict in workplaces with diverse teams. Ask yourself maybe in a different way. Do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the EDI integrated policies and procedures that regulate your workplace environment and practice? Are they objective or subjective to who the leader or the supervisor is? So that's kind of something that we really need to think of. I am a diverse employer. Why my team doesn't seem to benefit from diversity as everybody claims? Ask yourself how your diverse team feels every day coming to work. It's not only about diversity. I could be going to work, but suffering every day, right? So we really want to ask ourselves the question in a bit of a different way. So is it really enough to be diverse? What do you think? Of course not. So what else is important? So let's talk about diversity versus inclusion. Diversity is only the representation of people from different backgrounds and different equity-seeking groups. Getting them together on a table, amazing. And then what? So if the diversity lacks genuine inclusion, it's often referred to as tokenism. And this is not our goal. We want to make actions, remember, right? From awareness to action. So an inclusive workplace doesn't only need diversity of people present, it has a diversity of people involved, respected, heard, and trusted by the business. So make sure that you are having all the measures to include your diverse background, diverse population in your workplace. Why should I offer? So now we have talked about diversity and inclusion very briefly. Fine, someone like me working in a place, sign of diversity, feeling that people are nice, I'm comfortable bringing my identity there, I'm included. What else? So some employers might ask, why should I offer different accommodations if I'm already an equal employer? Equity or equality, and what even the difference is. And by the way, like I've seen this again and again and again, that people or employers claim at the end of job posting that they are equal opportunity employer. It's not about equality, by the way. So are you looking for inputs or outputs? Let's ask ourselves a question as employers. What do we need to achieve? Productivity, profitability, if we are for profit, not for profit, so best services for clients, homogeneous workplace, healthy environment in my workplace and team. Okay, are all of those outputs or inputs? They're all outputs, right? So employers always think about outputs. Let's imagine that you have 2 cell phones, and that's for the lack of better example. Okay, so no comparison here. But let's imagine that you have 2 cell phones, one that's really pretty modern Apple, cell phone, and one that's from the old days, that one with the antenna, Motorola, Ericsson kind of thing, if you have witnessed that. I have witnessed it myself. So anyways, consider that you would be putting the same SIM card in both to make phone calls. Do you think that both will be working and giving you the chance to make phone calls? Of course not, because they need different inputs to produce the same outputs. So think about it the same way. People are different. They need different needs to achieve the employer's similar outputs. So that's equality versus equity. So we need to give everybody what they need to be able to achieve the same that we want. Why a diverse employer might still face retention challenges? Are your diverse team represented in leadership teams? Do you give them those equity lenses, career access so they can grow and prosper? Are you really equitable to them so they can actually achieve that full potential and being represented in leadership teams, and then relay their voices and let their voices be heard? Is that something that you do? So you need definitely to ask this question. And I didn't find a better actually visual than this to kind of explain equity versus equality versus even empowerment when we actually remove the barriers. That's another top layer. So whether it's EDI, DEI, EDII, we need it all. That's what really matters. So, and why do we need it? Like, some employers are in their very early stages of the EDI spectrum, and they would ask, why do we need diversity in the first place? Like, we are good, we are doing great, right? So first thing, do you think market share? So if you want a more market segment, or even to maintain your market share in the market, if you are for profit or even not for profit, in regards to clients that you are serving, remember that community is changing. If you are not actually working with that change, you will be losing your market segment. So you will be behind. Do you think global connections, international markets? What better than having people who speak different languages and understand the cultures of those global markets and maybe having connections over there? Do you think increased retention rate, decrease in turnover cost? Of course, if you're inclusive and equitable, what might make me leave your workplace? I would love my workplace. I would, produce even more, and you would achieve the better retention rate. Do you think increased productivity and creativity? If we think differently, if we have different approaches, different global perspectives, different ways, different connections, definitely the outcome will be richer. So now that we know what we will do, okay, let's see. Very, very small fixes might actually lead to great impact. So look at the policy of recruitment and selection, because remember, we are talking diversity. So this is one of the examples that I have worked with some employers to improve. So the purpose of this policy, this is the old statement in the recruitment policy that they had. The purpose of this policy is to set consistent standards. Why consistent standards for different people? Remember, they need equitable standards that define the key principles, scope, roles, and responsibility that are associated with the recruitment and selection of talent. What would I understand about the key principles, scope, and roles and responsibilities of that organization if I'm a new member there? So that is, it's very vague. What is that? What does that mean? So if we just change that to a language like consistent and equitable standards, and then talking a little bit more about the principles, the scope, the roles, and say that, the recruitment and selection process that support the vision of the company on expanding and diversifying its qualified talent pool, so the corporate or the organization could meet successfully its current and future changing corporate. When I need such a statement, and I'm from a diverse background, I would feel, oh, this is the vision. This is the scope. These are the principles integrated, and I need to be matching with those, right? Oops. Yep. Okay, one more thing. Inclusive job posting. So it starts from even the job posting, how appealing it is. Maybe adding an opening statement that talk about, of course, that you are having an equity lens in your process for recruitment and hiring, but also maybe adding that you are trying to understand the collective sum of experiences, knowledge, innovation, self-expression, talent that you invest in your work. Maybe that's what you need to look at your talents or candidates, not the best fit. Because very honestly speaking, if you're looking the best fit for a group of white male employees, it will be another white male employee, right? That's very obvious. So we need really to understand more about the collective sum of assets that people bring to the table. Or maybe changing the wording by a very little thing. Of course, we would put, the credentials that are required and equivalent experience. Maybe just add internationally trained professionals as well. Like, they have earned their degrees, by the way, right? And they could have been recognized by the WES or ICAS in Canada. So why are you ignoring them? Just making them attracted to apply. Or equivalent international experience are welcome to apply. So those are very few fixes that make really a big impact. Of course, I was very fast and there are lots to learn. So if you need more support, we have the Workplace Inclusion Charter Project at Keys in Kingston, and we are very happy to share our best practices with more than 40 employers in this project with you and beyond. Please reach out to me at this email address and I'm happy to help. Thank you. Any question?
Great, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciated that presentation. So Dylan is just going to, he's just, I think, carrying over the questions from the chat. We'll see if we have any. Okay, we have lots. Okay, so I've also heard of the acronym as JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. What role do you think justice has to play in the employee retention and attraction? Ooh,
yeah.
that's a good question.
Thank you so much. I think that honestly, the justice is very similar to the equity piece, because again, how I see justice, it depends on the context and the individual needs. We cannot really, in my opinion, and I'm not a judge, but like in my very humble opinion, I would say that justice means that I am considering all the needs of other people. That's how I see that I would be just. I cannot say that if I would apply the same thing to everyone, then I'm just. That's not justice. Justice is equity, is understanding the different needs, trying to accommodate different people in different ways that actually make them feel that they can bring all of their identities and achieving all of their potential. This is how justice and equity function, in my opinion. This is how I always encourage employers to deal with their employees having those in mind.
What about how should an employer approach asking these questions? So I guess like in what setting, like one-on-one versus maybe in a meeting, what would you recommend?
Right. So that's a great question. Thanks for the person who asked this question. And I know, and I think that they are referring to the piece when I asked about, is it safe? And I know that it's been a little bit of a concern for many employers. And I think that, creating that safe space between the employees and the employers, and even between, business partners or people in general, it all starts with building the trust. So if you want to ask questions, you want to first build the trust between you and the other person. And I can assure you that any person who is coming from equity seeking group would appreciate you asking a question rather than assuming an assumption. It's way better to ask questions. If you don't know, we all don't know what we don't know. That's a very true statement. And by the way, there is one thing that I really am a big fan of, which is cultural humility. Everybody in the world, and specifically in Canada, are talking about cultural competency, cultural intelligence, which is amazing. However, honestly speaking, nobody can achieve the full competency of culture competency because honestly, you cannot understand the very single detail of every single culture on earth. That's impossible mission. So yeah. Rather than thinking cultural competency, think cultural humility. We don't know, so we ask questions. If you get to your employee using that approach, I bet that you will get the best answer ever.
That's amazing. That's really great. Because yeah, I've never heard that term before. So that's amazing. What about how often should an employer check in with their staff if they're meeting the diversity needs of the employees in the workplace?
Oh, that's also a great question. I like the questions today. So how often depends on the status of the employee. So are they on their onboarding process, for example? So if they are pretty new to the organization, I would say that, more frequent check-ins is best because they need that kind of sense of the organization, its vision, its strategies. They would see some things that they wouldn't understand. They might have some needs. And this is, again, the period in which you would build as an employer the trust with the employee, right? once they are integrated and more understanding and having that trust that if they need something, they will be approaching and ask, maybe we would do this check-in in a better of, in a bit of further intervals, I would say. So maybe in the beginning, every couple of weeks, and then maybe every month, and then maybe every 3 months. It depends. And there are many, many things that you can do in that regard, by the way. So through the charter, we have employers sometimes build what we call buddy program, which is kind of a friendly, structured mentorship program. So they will be having a buddy to ask any question when they feel like, without feeling the threat of talking to the immediate leader or supervisor.
Right, because maybe they can understand, what's going on, like from the employee perspective, right? Because they're working with somebody that's been there for longer, and they can get the ropes from them. I'm also wondering, some of the tips that you were giving were for like the job posting, right? I wonder if you have any recommendations for how an employer can include those type of things, like in an interview. Like, what would you recommend in an interview for an employer to say?
Oh my gosh, a lot. There is a lot that I can offer, but very simple thing I would say, it's and this is kind of an immediate and future need. It guarantees the immediate and the future need for candidates to be recruited. So one of the things that employers tend to not ask in an interview is, what is your approach when you are working with diverse team or people who are having different backgrounds? Or what's your take on equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? Because oftentimes we see this in workplaces that staff members are suffering from other staff members because they give them really hard time because they can't really cope with them, right? Because they feel that they, like lots of things, right? So it's very important to make sure that if you have as a leader the vision of having a diverse workplace and an inclusive workplace and an equitable workplace, that you actually build a team that has the same vision. So it's a very important question to include in an interview. It will save you lots of conflicts and turnovers afterwards. So that would be my first thing to bring.
Amazing. And we also just had another question for your presentation, if the slides will be available. And yes, they will be the same way, just on the Growing Your Workforce Conference website. And we are working on how we can make the recordings available to people with the consent of the presenter. So that feedback will come to the audience as well once we are able to establish that. And Wessam's contact information is up on the screen, and she had at the end of her presentation. So if you have any additional questions for her, please email her and reach out to her at any point. And thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for an amazing conference. Thanks.